What is health? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. What is health? The standard definition of health is the overall well-being of an organism. And there are other definitions such as the optimal well-being, and also to be free of disease or ailment, and a few others. So right off the bat, even with the standard definitions, there are a lot of philosophical holes, and they don't necessarily overlap in the standard definitions, right? So to begin with, the overall well-being of an organism, well, we could just as easily call that a system, because people like to apply the idea of health not just to biological organisms, but to overall systems, right? They can be ecosystems, biosystems, whatever. And people use the term interchangeably for non-biological systems as well, like the health of a computer system, the health of a network, the health of a nation, health of infrastructure, whatever. And in that sense, they're just saying, the overall proper working order to a level of functionality. And in that way, health, in terms of markers, is subjective. But philosophically, I think it's helpful. We'll focus on human health, and we'll do it from a philosophical perspective, where in previous video, I discussed, do our thoughts create our reality? And the consensus is throughout time and space from many other thinkers that thoughts do create our reality. And that what's going on in our temples, in our temple, in between our temples, in our thought palace, not only amplifies everything and creates everything in our reality, but it's also highly psychosomatic for our biological body. Psychosomatic meaning that we can convince ourselves to heal ourselves, and we can convince ourselves to make ourselves ill. That's a phenomenon that has been proven by placebo effect. The placebo effect is where scientists will give one group of people, they'll have two groups that come in for a kind of medicine to fix an ailment, and they'll give one group the new medicine, and then they'll give the other group, who thinks they're still getting the medicine, they'll give them a sugar pill, something that has no medical effect. And then they'll get a percentage of the increase in health of the group they give the medicine for, and almost universally, even though they did not give anybody in the other group medicine, supposed medicine, they almost universally get a significant percentage, a statistically significant percentage of people in the placebo group who do get healthy in the same way or more than the people who got the pharmaceutical medicine. And that's across any type of medicine, any place of the world. That's just a human phenomenon, where the only difference between the two people, like really the two things they had in common, were people who were getting the medicine thought they were getting medicine, and people who weren't getting medicine also thought they were getting medicine. So in either case, the thing they had in common was they thought they were going to get better. They were willing themselves. They were using their thoughts to project on themselves that they were getting healthier. And in the case of the group that was not given medicine, you might as well just given them a glass of water and said, hey, this is like your magic glass of water. This is going to make you healthier. And they believed it, and then it worked. Statistically significant almost always occurs, which is direct evidence of the power of the mind to heal yourself. And those are in settings where they are not trying to prove that. It just keeps happening. So you can imagine what would happen if you took those people, if you took a person who did that, and you showed them that they had not been given medicine in the manner they thought they had been given, but in fact they had been given a placebo, and then you explained to them, look, not only did you get healthy, you got healthier than the people we gave our real medicine to. Like, the power of your mind works. So what we're going to do with you We're going to take you to a place where they know this is true, and we're going to train you how to use your mind to heal yourself, because you've already exhibited these natural gifts. And we're going to put you in an environment where they know this is actually true, and they're going to train you to do it even better, and you're going to concentrate on it. After they'd already proven in a traditional scientific setting that that person had mental gifts to heal themselves. Well, it's obvious if you took them out of that environment where they're trying to actually disprove that phenomenon, and you put them in an environment where they know that's actually the truth to well-being and health, and you got them trained up with people who could teach them how to do it, you can imagine how much healthier they would get, and like how quickly they could do it just with the power of their mind. So we know for a fact, a scientific fact, that you can improve your health condition simply with the force of your mind. That is a fact. Which means that when we're analyzing the human system for health, we start with our thoughts. The human system of health begins with our thoughts. What's going on in our brain, physiologically, we have this homeostasis center. There's a portion of our brain that's essentially the computer room where every pertinent piece of data for our biological ecosystem, which is super vast. We've simplified it because, most of us aren't doctors or physiologists, but it's incredibly complex inside of us. And the amount of data that gets fed into that area of our brain is astonishing. That area of our brain is the area of our brain that then coordinates all of the internal chemicals, hormones, blood rates, like heart rates, everything. All the internal systems are coordinated there, and like the amount of electricity that gets sent through the system, the amount of internal drugs, like all the stuff, the serotonins, the dopamines, everything, to try to create a homeostasis, which is it's a balancing point to try to establish like a baseline health. Okay. Now the brain is doing that in relation to what the person has, through practice, fed into the brain to tell them what's the desired healthy baseline. Because the desired healthy baseline in there that the homeostasis is trying to work to is going to be different for an Olympic athlete than it is for an academic. And it varies too with life conditions, because the idea of health isn't about everybody being ripped and ready to surf a 30-foot wave. That's impossible. Everybody's different. The health baseline changes based on what the physiological options are for that person. So if you're missing limbs, if you have different, I don't know what a polite way to put it is, but if you have different disabilities or disadvantages, we all have them. I have my own. But whatever the physical limitations are in the body that keep a person from being like 100%, everything's, fully healthy all the time. Because, age also takes out everything. So whatever. So the brain says, okay, this is what I'm working with, essentially. Whatever your body is. And it works from there. And then after it determines what you're working with on the body, and of course that gets updated. That's a software update that happens. If you get hit by a car, or you have a good day, or you get gains, like your brain adjusts to the nature of the body at the current moment. And then from there, inside the brain still, it says, coordinates with other parts of the brain to say, well, what's the overall use? What are the demands of the user on this body? What are we trying to use this body for? Right? So in the case of the Olympian, it's whatever their sport is, and then all the derivative things. And, if it's an academic, they really need their brain to be on point, and like whatever goes with that, and everything in between. So you go, okay, so the body's working this management system where it's saying, okay, this is what we're working with, and these are the goals this person has for the body. And then that, not only is that set into motion the homeostasis, which sets everything in motion, right? Like because you're thinking about it. This is the power of the thoughts. So your thoughts start to then communicate to the different parts of your body. Like, oh, you wanted to get skinny. So now all of a sudden your stomach will communicate with you. And your stomach will say, oh, well, we've analyzed what your actual body goals are, and now you're trying to put this, you know, you want to eat a full chocolate cake, and your stomach's saying no. You told us what your goals were, and now we're going to make you feel like not good about that, to give you an emotion to remind you of the alarm you set for yourself, right? And then it does that throughout your entire system. And that is highly bespoke. That's internally whatever we go into to set our thoughts about what our health baseline is and what the functionality of our body is, starts to inform the different aspects of ourselves, of the behaviors we should align with in order to achieve the goals that we're setting mentally, okay? That's just like physiology or internal workings, right? That's not even anything crazy like drawing in energy or using the power of the mind to even heal the self in the way that we're talking about in the placebos. That's just basic self-discipline. I'll do a different video on self-discipline. That's just basic internal self-discipline to get the body straight. But you can't have true health unless the thoughts are straight first. The power of the mind over the body in the placebo sense seems to be a generalized energy draw, where somehow, I haven't seen the studies that figured it out, but somehow it's akin to magic, where the such strong self-belief that the person can be healthy allows fundamental changes in the biology to work. I mean, it could just be like that it enormously floods the body with white blood cells because now all of the critical limitations have been removed from the brain. I think that's the key philosophically to this sort of self-healing with the mind, is that to let go of the critical thinking about how the body can actually operate. And when that happens, it appears, as demonstrated by the placebo effect, that it can be rushed in, like nearly instantaneous increases in the health levels and healings can flow in. And physiologically, like I said, that could be a bunch of white blood cells hit all of a sudden, or there might be ways to vibrate our DNA that create spontaneous generations that we just haven't discovered through our scientific metrics yet. I mean, this is philosophical. I don't know. This is speculative. And I'm only speculating because it's real. It's proven. The placebo effect is real. That's, out of those studies, we should not even care about the stupid pills they're giving people. We should be like, how the heck are these people healing themselves simply with the power of their mind and positive thought? And they appear to be, well, they are channeling these spontaneous improvements in their health simply with the power of their mind. Okay? Now going back into it, we know that our thoughts set the values and the baselines and the objectives to our internal mental system that are in charge of our health, and then seem to have set corresponding emotions and behavior markers in ourselves for us to follow in order to achieve what we've set out for ourselves. And conversely, it doesn't put us into those other modes of things we haven't set for ourselves. Hey, for instance, I'm a philosopher. I'm sitting here. Obviously, one of the focuses of my body is to have a clear mind and be able to speak properly and convey thoughts. Well, guess what I'm not doing? I'm not at Gold's Gym on Venice Beach trying to put up 400 pounds on the bench. And I feel fine about that, because that's not in my self-vision for health. And conversely, if tomorrow I woke up and decided I wanted to be a power builder and I wanted to try to, throw up 400 on the bench at Gold's Gym at Venice Beach, then tomorrow, if I really believe that, and I woke up and I didn't go to Venice Beach, my body would be like, oh man, what are you doing? You said you're going to go put up 400 today. So we set in our minds an idea of the type of health that we're trying to attain. The health being the overall well-being of our organism, or really just a system, because our body is a system of systems. It's exceptionally complex. And where we manage it from is in our thoughts. So in the core of our mind. So it's important about which concepts of health that we discern and allow to affect how we think about our health and how we feel about it. Because as the old adage goes, healthy, wealthy, and wise. And that's in order. Health comes first. You can be wealthy and wise, but if you have poor health, man, you're in a mobile prison. Health determines how our emotions feel in our interaction with the reality, right? And it begins with our thoughts, because if our thoughts are off, so it goes from the biological to our mental perspective. They say health is also body and mind. That's the traditional orthodox thought, is body and mind. That's also in the standard definition. So we know that the body health begins with our mind, with our thoughts, because then that dictates how we want to be, what we want to do, and then what our activities are to ensure the health of our body to the best of our ability, excluding accidents and things out of our control and all that. But even some of the accidents that people get into, it's because their version of health allowed for extremely risky behavior. And I've done that. I was a snowboarder for a long time, and snowboarding's out of all the sports I've done, snowboarding's the sport that injured me the most. Multiple concussions, all sorts of things happened to me snowboarding. And that was because my version of health didn't include risk management. I was a bit of an adrenaline junkie. And so that took me, in terms of health management, over the line into these extremely dangerous areas, it is an unhealthy thing to do. To repeatedly place oneself in harm's way, especially when it can lead to death or dismemberment. If you do that chronically, it's unhealthy. You can get to a point of competency where it's a managed risk, but it's still an unhealthy mindset overall, right? But then this goes back to the bespoke thing, like, oh, well, if your goal is to only live to a certain age for health, then you take on these other risks. Like I did that in the Army. I was a helicopter pilot, and I was like, well, I might die in my 20s. It's not a healthy mentality. But if you accept it as a healthy mentality, then it frees you up to do all these other activities. So the expectation that you have in your mind leads to what you believe are acceptable risks in the present moment. So if you believe you're not going to live to a certain age, then you're going to live like that. And if you believe that, or you want to live to be, 100 years old, then you're going to manage your risk different. And that all goes into how the mind releases certain internal chemicals based on certain activities and how it weights your emotional interaction with these activities that you need. Because if you think you're going to die tomorrow, then you're probably going to do a certain set of things today. But if you believe you're going to live up to 100, you're going to make healthier choices, and your emotions are going to get reassigned. You have more patience, more long-term vision, and that's going to minimize all these more short-term things, because you're committing to a different timeline, and that has different health considerations. And you don't want to, if you want to live to be 100, it's probably not a good idea to smoke a ton of cigarettes every day. Just doing the math. And there's a bunch of things like that, right? You can get more ridiculous. You can say, well, if you think you're going to die tomorrow, then, like, if a person thinks they're going to die tomorrow, then maybe today's the day they decide that they're going to go do a Grand Theft Auto and rob a bank for an existential thrill. They're like, well, I'm dying tomorrow. I just always wondered what it would be like to steal a car and rob a bank. Oh, it's not healthy. And the unhealthiness comes from the life expectancy, which is a whole part of mental health that it's really critical. and it doesn't really get talked about too much, is a sense of life expectancy and how that makes a person act in the moment. And once again, it just gets back to the core point that the health and how you handle your health, which is an ongoing thing. It's a daily activity, because health dictates what you eat, who you talk to. It really dictates all your behavior. And it begins internally with your commitment to health, what you expect out of yourself and what your values are. And then everything, your brain manages it, because you can't be conscious all the time. Your unconscious is running a lot of the show. But your unconscious is running the show based on a value system you've set up internally. And that's before we even get back to these placebo things where all of a sudden just spontaneous amounts of energy and change can come in, and we don't really know how biologically that works. We just know that it does happen, right? So you're just setting the circumstances for spontaneous healing, which obviously you can't count on, but you can encourage. Now that we know it's a scientific fact, it's a thing that we can encourage and train. And there's no side effects to it. They don't have to put warnings on the power of your mind to heal yourself. There's no side effects. Except maybe that you just figure out you can use your mind to improve your life in all sorts of other areas. Right? Now, so health begins with thoughts. It begins with your thoughts and permeates through your body. And then it resonates in your field, and you find yourself in situations that either it gives you a sense of contrast or harmony where you go. Because once you've established your health baseline, you can tell from your feelings if the environment or activity you're in is healthy or not. And then it becomes a self-balancing system where you get this momentum, this stability. Once you get health, there's a stability of a healthy baseline lifestyle that you can feel, and that becomes a navigation feeling, because it's like a gyroscope. Once you have this inertia of health, you know, you don't really want to deviate off it, because coming out of health, especially intentionally, feels terrible. So the health begins with the thoughts, it permeates out to the body. It requires self-discipline, which ends up being fun, because it's self-discipline are those decision points where you're actively saying to yourself, yes, I'm being healthy. I'm doing this because I love my body, I love my health, I value my health, and we're going to propagate health. So, philosophically, the health of an organism, in this case humans, is a controllable process. It's a process of the conscious and unconscious. It's a thing that we do have control over. And it appears as though the more awareness, self-awareness in this case, that we exhibit, the more we can improve our health without any external means, which is pretty extraordinary. Now, the external means of medicine, they're fine. You know, case-by-case basis. See what it is, see what the results have been, see what other people say, check out the Yelp reviews. Okay, cool. Nothing against that. The power of the mind is an additive to all this. And it's also something that can make your health, if you are healthy, it can make you even healthier and stronger and abundant in health, so that you can cruise through maladies. So it's in addition to all these other external forms of medicine. It's not a replacement for. It's not to say that it can't replace it in some cases, but it's not a replacement for. But it all begins with our thoughts and our expectations of self and being real with it. And now that we know that, when we look at the health of other systems, we can apply a similar process. We look to analyze what's the core driving mechanism for this system's health, right? In environmental science is really easy. You know, they know what if they're looking at an ecosystem, they have a way to analyze it. You know, usually in a natural ecosystem, it's, you know, how fresh is the water source, right? That's typically the best way to tell the health of a natural system. So, okay, cool. Where's the main water source? What's going on with that? And then everything kind of systemically is a tributary from that, from the water system. And then, and it varies from system to system. In a computer system, you could say, oh, okay, what's the health of the core CPU? Like, what's it running? What software is in there? What's the efficiency of, what's its megahertz rate? Like, what's the cycles per second? What's the efficiency of the electricity going through the system? Is the information gated properly? You could look at all these things, but it really just begins with, okay, what's the CPU doing? So the health it's a great way to, it's a systemic analysis that we can overlay on any kind of system. We just find what the core source of the health is in that system, basically find out where it's having its thoughts, as a metaphor, and what's feeding off of the core energy of it. And then we can do analysis. Because the symptoms, those are things that we have to back engineer and follow the chain of causation back to the source. By the way, when it comes to health analysis, accidents and random stuff and all that stuff, that's not, like I said, that's not controllable. So if you have a broken arm, it's not like, oh, well, I mean, here's the thing. You can do the check. If somebody gets a broken arm, you go back into the mind and go, okay, what were they thinking? And that's a common question. People always go, what were you thinking, right? Especially accidents. That's a helpful tool to do. Now, it's not, blame the person, but it's, okay, were they an adrenaline junkie who, they were all hopped up and they, went and tried to, ollie a 50 staircase and now they got a broken arm? Well, it's pretty obvious what's going on up here. Or were they just, taking a stroll down the street and, car hit them, right? So, different ways, but you still want to check back and go, oh, okay. And then for other types of things, many things that affect our health are simply lacks of discipline. Like if somebody gets morbidly obese and now their internal organs are shutting down simply because they ate too much and didn't exercise enough, you got to go back into the mindset and say, okay, where in the mindset did things get to the point where they lost self-management, where they lost self-agency, and they got to a place where now their entire biosystem is toxic to themselves. Clearly that begins with the thoughts. And that's the case with a whole bunch of other health symptoms where they're simply self-induced. And, they're innumerable, really. In the East, they say dis-ease is dis-ease, right? The Buddhists will teach you that when you get out of balance with self, that's what the dis-ease is. And then dis-ease causes disease. They go to the spiritual level and say it's all internal balancing, all your chakras, all the energy flows. In the East, that's why they do acupuncture, because the energy meridians, and the Western science has proven that the energy meridians do line up with the nervous system as electrical transmission points, essentially. They do go into etheric realms. So, acupuncture, ancient treatment of unclogging and realigning the meridian points so that your electricity can flow better, that's real science. It's just deeper science. And when those things get out of balance, the spiritual people say that's all due to spiritual imbalance. Which, good for us, all those controls, even the spiritual controls and values, they're still thoughts. So the thoughts are still the driver on all this, even if it's a spiritual thing, even if it's a scientific thing, no matter what it is, the thought process that's going on up here is affecting that. It's laying out the blueprint for ourselves, for our health. So in the same manner that we're constantly projecting success in the material world, which we all do, money, lovers, houses, cars, food, shelter, all the stuff. And we almost And we almost can't stop projecting that. It's just constant. With the same hope and vigor, we can project our health and our health goals. And we know this works because every professional athlete, every super in shape person, if you ask them, what was the thing that did it for you that allowed you to become this super skilled, healthy, athletic person, and it doesn't matter where they're from on earth, at some point they always say that they believed in themselves and they just knew that their thoughts were in harmony with that. And that once they got their thoughts in harmony and then they got focused and then the self-discipline came in and they all lined up, then they were able to achieve this extraordinary status of their health, which translated into professional athletics. And so it's a fact. We know that if you want to be in extraordinary health and in extraordinary skill sets, you have to have a positive mindset about it, that the power of the mind is what propels that. The mind is what is the driver's seat of our body to make these improvements, to want to have them, and to get them done. And conversely, if you view yourself negatively, you can spiral down really quickly to the point where you want to commit suicide, which is the least healthy act available. And is usually the result of multiple things occurring from negative thinking about one's health. Of course, not everybody, but for many people, they just manifested themselves down a spiral to a point where they just wanted to end it all. And that's the exact opposite of a professional athlete who has such positive and tremendous self-belief and the ability for them to control their bodies and their outcomes with their minds, that now they're being rewarded and living their dreams. So philosophically, health, control it with our minds for the most part. Power of the mind is paramount. It puts all our other health decisions in motion. We're the ones who internally determine our values about health. In terms of the politics of it, take this view of an individual being, the individual is always responsible for their health. They can be coerced, they can be misled, they can be properly informed, or they can be enlightened. But the individual is responsible for their health. No doctor, no external system, no nothing can be with an individual 24 hours a day and inside their head and make all their decisions and make all their perceptive decisions. Because, dude, mental health, if you're biologically healthy, if in your mind you've been brainwashed by ideologies, they could be political, religious, economic, material, occupational, it doesn't matter. If you've had your brain brainwashed, it doesn't matter how healthy your body is too, because then you're having a warped perception of the world, which is also unhealthy. That's what mental illness is, really, is this: you have an incorrect lens on reality and you think you're interacting with it one way and it's incorrect. And it's because, I'm not going to get all the causes of mental health, but philosophically, you're thinking incorrect thoughts in terms of incorrect being not in harmony with health and not in harmony with clarity of the actual reality, or at least to a degree that makes it that to within a certain degree of the actual reality, clarity of like what's actually going on. And I don't mean that in terms of like current events and news and stuff, just like that you're a biological being manifested in a third dimensional world and it has certain laws to operate by, it's cause and effect, and all the basics, things that like 7-year-olds know. And if you've warped or allowed yourself to have had a warped worldview, then no matter what you do, even if your body's healthy, you're not going to get the results that you want. Even if you try to enforce your warped and sick and unhealthy worldview on other people. And that's typically the story of dictators, fascists, ideologues of any, stripe or color, is they have a very aggressive, profound belief in something that's wrong. And instead of looking internally to go to where the health begins, which is with their thoughts, and fix their thoughts and let go of these false belief systems that they have, rather than do that, they decide the option is to go out and force everybody else to cater to their abhorrent, deviant activity and foist it upon healthy people. And then when healthy people come back to that person and say, hey, this is sick, you're sick, then for them it becomes a power struggle. They don't look internally to determine that. 99% of the time they don't look internally to determine if what these healthy people are telling them is true, because sometimes these people are physically healthy, so they look at themselves and they're so delusional and so mentally ill, they go, well, I'm physically healthy, so this person must be incorrect, but they don't understand their mental health and their perception of the world's off. And so what these healthy people are telling them is accurate. And so at that point, instead of going internally to figure out what's wrong with their mental health, they make a power calculation to determine, have I gained enough power to overpower that person and override their perspective they're giving me, which is a common thing in humanity. It happens all the time, various ways, not just political. I mean, it happens in high school social cliques. It happens anywhere. And then the sick person's trying to overpower the healthy people because they don't want to admit that they have mental problems and that their perception is warped. And once again, it's because our thoughts on the higher level control our reality, but our health is really the core where the rubber meets the road of our interaction of creating our reality. If we're healthy and we're fit and we know thyself, then we can make miracles happen. We can get to energy levels, vibration levels, social levels, money levels, all sorts of levels that allow for different levels of creation and manifestation to occur that are absolutely unavailable to the unhealthy person. Just facts. So our level of health directly impacts our ability to interact with the reality. And of course there's anomalies. Like, Stephen Hawking, body shot, right? Body highly unhealthy. Found a stasis, was able to keep living. Mind extremely healthy. And at some point, apparently, that was like he had to adjust himself through the power of his mind to say, whoa, just because my body went doesn't mean this is the end of the road for me. He, through the power of his mind, accepted his situation and reformulated his version of health for himself. And he saw it had a tremendous impact on the world. He could have just allowed his mental health to decline as well, and to say, oh, my biological body is shot, then that's curtains. But he didn't. So through the power of the mind, he reimagined himself based on his current biological specs and moved forward through space and time with a super healthy mind. And, and that worked out for him, and we can all do that. So the power of health, getting to a healthy vibration of, at a minimum, mind and body, it unlocks certain things in the reality. And but it's really about the mind. So I guess in that last example, you can see, even if your body supposedly goes, or it does go, your mind, what's going on up here, can still make your quality of life amazing. And conversely, even if your body's healthy, the thoughts you're having can make your life miserable. So our mental thoughts and interaction with the reality are the prime driver of our health. And there's all these different ways to look at it. But that's really the core thing to understand, is that our thoughts are what create our baseline of health and our expectation of health. And when we have an expectation of health, that's when the inertia builds. That's when we have the strength to, like, you know, eat the right thing, do the right exercise, listen to the right person, all that stuff. And then our emotions can feel good, and then we can actually enjoy our lives. So, I guess, you know, and on the political side, look, well, this isn't a healthcare discussion, so health. It's our, essentially, the determination of our prime interaction with the reality. It's something that happens for a human. It's something that happens for any organism or system. If you know how to look at it properly, if you know how to analyze it, and you have good insight and discernment, and you know what the nature of the system is that you're looking at, and you know how to define it properly, then you can analyze it and you can find where the core health elements are of the system. It doesn't matter if it's an animal or a system or a machine or whatever. Health is a universal concept, because health really speaks to the functionality of an organism in relation to creation. And that's the harmony that I believe that the body is trying to achieve. The body's trying to achieve a stasis with the creation, and that stasis is informed by our thoughts of who we think we are, who we think we're trying to be. And if it turns out those things are wrong, and the reality is trying to tell us who we need to be, and then we need to get in harmony with the reality, then it's best in terms of a health perspective to align with that and see where that takes us. It's a two-way street. It's not, health isn't a thing to be made up to dominate the reality, because that may not always be the best thing. That may not be the optimum health. The optimum health may be something a little different. It's a give and take with the reality, but you do have to establish a general baseline of health to be able to interact with the reality with competency and confidence. Well, I think it's decent coverage on health. Obviously, not going to cover everything about health in however long this video was, but I hope you found it helpful. I hope. Thanks for spending some time here at Philosopher's Corner. I hope you have fun and be healthy.